Field sobriety tests. Should you be prepared? Do you want to be prepared in case you get pulled over by an officer? Well, if so, this is the video for you. In this video, I'm going to cover what are the field sobriety test instructions and what our police officers look for if you decide to do field sobriety tests for a DUI. Well, my name's Lance Fryrear, and I have a defense firm here in Washington State. We've been defending people charged with crimes for more than 20 years. So in this video, I'm going to cover three things. One, what are the instructions for field sobriety tests? There's three standard tests. Two, what are the officers looking for in scoring those tests? And three, and most importantly, what should you watch out for? What should you try to remember if you decide to do field sobriety tests? So I've been putting out these videos for a long time now. I think we've got 80 plus videos on this channel. So if you find this information helpful, please like and please subscribe. It helps me get the information out there to more people. And so with that, I'm just going to jump right into item number one. What are the instructions for field sobriety tests? Well, basically there's three standardized tests and they're used throughout the nation. And this is not a video about whether or not you should or should not do field sobriety tests. You probably shouldn't. But if you do decide to do field sobriety tests, here's what to expect from the officer. So the first field sobriety test is typically called the horizontal gaze nystagmus test. And that's where an officer checks your eyes to see if they have equal tracking or not, and whether or not your eyes sort of jump when you're following a stimulus from an officer. And so this is the least expansive of the field sobriety tests. It's basically only used to establish alcohol consumption. And so it's not super useful, but basically the officer's going to make you watch a stimulus and it's going to tell you to hold your head still and then track the stimulus with your eyes. They're also then going to make you go way out here to maximum deviation and hold the pin, trying to see if your eyes jerk. They'll do it on both sides. And they'll eventually also track up and down for horizontal nystagmus. So in that test, they just tell you to follow the pin or the light and hold your head still. And that's pretty much what you do. And again, I'm going to get into what they're looking for in step two. I'm just covering the instructions now. So the second test they typically have you do is called the walk and turn test. On the walk and turn test, they're going to put you in a starting position and then give you a really complicated set of instructions. There's about, 8 instructions they have to give you, and they go something like this. They say, stand with one foot in front of the other, touching heel to toe, and don't move from that position until I tell you to. Do you understand? Then you'll say yes. When I tell you to, I want you to take 9 heel to toe steps down the line. I want you to turn in a prescribed manner and return taking 9 heel to toe steps. Here I'll demonstrate. And then the officer will typically demonstrate several steps. They'll tell you, when you get to your 9th step, I want you to keep your front foot planted and turn with the other foot, taking a series of small steps. Then return taking 9 heel to toe steps. Now, when you start walking, I want you to look at your feet as you walk. I want you to keep your arms at your sides. I want you to count each step out loud. And once you start walking, I want you to not stop walking until you've completed the test. Do you understand? So those are the actual instructions they're supposed to give you for the walk and turn. And I'm going to cover what's important in the next phase of this video about what they're looking for. Finally, the third test is called the one-leg stand test. And the one-leg stand test instructions go something like this. Okay, I want you to keep your feet together, arms at your sides. Don't begin this test until I tell you to. Do you understand? When I tell you to, I want you to pick one foot up off the ground, approximately 6 inches, foot pointed out, and I want you to count out loud 1001, 1002, 1003, and so forth until I tell you to stop. Now, as you have your foot elevated, I want you to look at your elevated foot. I want you to count out loud. I want you to keep your arms at your sides. And if you happen to put your foot down during the test, I want you to pick your foot back up and continue counting where you left off. Do you understand? that is basically the instructions for the one-leg stand test. So they rattle them off very quick. They need to give you proper instructions, and I can cover in step 3 what happens if they don't give you proper instructions. And it's okay for you to ask for them to instruct it again because you're nervous, you might have been drinking, you're on the side of the road, it's cold, you're embarrassed, you're scared, and we want to please authority. So don't be afraid to ask to do for the instructions again. So going on to number 2, what are they looking for in each of these tests? What are the clues that they're looking for to try to use this to justify your arrest for DUI? Well, on the horizontal gaze nystagmus test, the first test, they're basically looking for involuntary jerking of the eyes. It's something you can't tell if you're doing. They're looking for whether or not your eyes track smoothly, whether or not they involuntarily jerk, and whether or not when you're at maximum deviation, whether or not they shake at maximum deviation. And so that's the sort of the least important one for you to know about what they're looking for, because you really can't control it. And it's only valid for certain people. It doesn't work in my eyes. I have an eye problem where I would not be a valid candidate for the gaze nystagmus test. And so it's not the end of the world, that test. They're also looking for horizontal nystagmus. Basically, if you have horizontal nystagmus, that means you're probably really drunk for you, supposedly. So hopefully you don't need to worry too much about what they're looking for. Now, the next test you have to worry about a little more. The next test, which is the walk and turn test, they're looking for 8 different clues. They're looking for if you start the test too soon. If you begin to take a practice step before they tell you to start, that counts against you. They're looking for whether or not you break from the starting position. You remember I told you they put one foot in front of the other. If you break from that to gain balance while you're listening, that counts against you. They're looking if you take the correct number of steps. They're looking for if you step off the line, and usually it's an imaginary line, so how do you know whether or not you step off it? They're looking for whether or not you miss heel to toe by more than a certain amount of space, okay? And it's hard to judge that for an officer. They're looking for, it's usually half an inch. They're looking for whether or not you use your arms for balance, or your arms more than 6 inches from your side. And they're looking for whether or not you do an improper turn, that series of small steps. And finally, they're looking for whether or not you stop walking while you're doing the test. Do you stop and say, what do I do now? That counts against you all. So they're looking for 8 things. And in my opinion, some officers will count 2 clues by just one mistake. If you, let's say you step way to the side, so you miss heel to toe, and then you step off that imaginary line. Oftentimes there's not a real line. And so for that test, if you score just 2 clues out of 8, they say that that's indicative of DUI. It's not really pass-fail, but think of it as a fail. And that's one reason why you probably shouldn't do field sobriety tests. So that's what they're looking for, walk and turn. So on the one-leg stand test, they're looking for 4 different clues. They're looking for whether or not you hop, whether or not you sway, whether or not you use your arms for balance, and whether or not you put your foot down. Swaying really isn't defined. Arms for balance is 6 inches. Hopping is hopping, and putting your foot down is putting your foot down. If you put your foot down 3 times, they're going to score all 4 clues. So again, if they're just looking for 2 clues out of 4, if you do 2, then that's a fail. So again, generally speaking, not a great idea to do field sobriety tests. They're pretty much impossible to pass, even if you haven't been drinking. So thanks for sticking around to the end, to number 3, which is what should you worry about? What should you look for? What's important about field sobriety tests if you do agree to do them? Well, on the horizontal gaze nystagmus, you want to pay attention to, are you facing the flashing lights of the cars? So if you are, remember that, because that can induce something called optokinetic nystagmus, and that can make your eyes jerk even if you haven't been drinking. You also want to look for, is the officer evenly going with his stimulus, or is he sort of swaying way out here? And that's a mistake. They're supposed to maintain a constant distance. Sometimes there's a video, we can see it, sometimes they're not. So those are the 2 things to worry about for gaze nystagmus. For the walk and turn, there's a bunch of things you want to worry about. How well lit is it? What type of shoes do you have on? Is there an actual line or an imaginary line? Was there enough room to do the 9 steps? Is it sloped, or the area that you're walking on? What are the weather conditions? Are you freezing and shivering? Do you not have your glasses so you can't see? Additionally, is there detritus or junk in the way? I mean, are you walking over broken glass? And if you have heels on, some type of high heels, did the officer give you a chance to take off your shoes to do basically the test barefoot? They're supposed to do that if you have a certain size of heels. Finally, on the one-leg stand test, what do you want to look for? Well, again, how bright was it out? What's your physical condition with your shoes, right? Do you have good balance or not? Normally is something you want to take into account. And how close was the officer to you? Was the officer so close it was intimidating you? Was it sloped? Were there cars zooming by on the side of the road? Those are things you want to take note of that a defense attorney is going to ask you later about a field sobriety test. So that's basically what to expect for a field sobriety test, what the instructions are, what they're looking to score, and what are some things to think about if you do agree to tests and you get arrested that you're going to want to tell your defense attorney later. So I know this has been a long video and it's sort of complicated, and if this interests you, I hope it does. And if so, please like the video, please subscribe. It gets it out to more people. And if you find yourself with a DUI and you're in that type of situation, don't be afraid to give us a call. Again, my name's Lance Fryrear. I owe the law offices of Lance Fryrear, and we've been defending people charged with crimes for more than 20 years. I prosecuted for 7 years before that, so we know both sides. We know what to do to help you. We know what to do to try to get you a good result in your case, and hopefully we can also make you feel better, because I know it's a stressful time. So please give us a call. We'll do everything we can, and we'll be there for you. Thank you.